humblemud.
Necrosoft Games recently partnered with 109 creators on itch.io to create the Game Industry Hardship Bundle. The proceeds from this bundle, which contains over 100 games for just $10, will be distributed to game developers who have recently been laid off. And I'm sure you've all seen the news regarding the layoffs this year. It has been rough, to say the least. The fund will be run and dispensed by United Video Game Workers and will help developers in North America with necessities like food, healthcare, and rent. Today, I'm going to cover 22 games, 2 that I've played before and recommend, and 20 that are completely new to me, to hopefully help you decide whether this bundle is worth picking up, or give you an idea of where to start if you've already bought the bundle. Now, this video releases on August 10th, and the bundle deal ends on August 13th, so I'd advise you act fast if you're interested. However, if you've already missed the deal, I think there's still a really good chance that you'll find a game here that's worth the money. Alright, first let's start with the 2 games I've played before and know that I can recommend. A Short Hike is a brilliant little cozy game about a bird named Claire who spends her summer at Hawk Peak Provincial Park where her aunt works. She's expecting an important call but has no service out there, so her only option is to hike to the summit of the mountain where she'll hopefully have service. What takes place during this hike is one of the finest examples of a lighthearted, laid-back, slice-of-life gaming experience. Claire ends up helping out a lot of other kids along the way, playing and competing in different games, and learning a lot about herself by the end of it. The dialogue is witty and often really funny, and between the Studio Ghibli-inspired soundtrack and wonderful art style, this game cemented itself as a modern classic. Also, I think it's worth mentioning that A Short Hike is normally $8 by itself, which in my mind already proves the value of this $10 bundle. But if you've already played this one, or you're someone who wants more of an action-oriented experience, then perhaps Magenta Horizon is the one for you. While it may look like a Metroidvania at a glance, it's really more of a 2D action platformer. I'd say it's got more in common with something like Devil May Cry as opposed to Symphony of the Night. Magenta Horizon has an incredible, unique art style with really crazy monster designs, and as you can guess given the colors of my channel, I'm a big fan of that magenta look. I first played this game in 2025 with full intentions to review it, but frankly, I was just not all that good at this game. This time around though, I swallowed my pride and played on an easier difficulty. Now it's really clicking for me, and while I'm still not amazing at it, I'm enjoying it a lot more now. The combat and movement feel exceptionally smooth, and that prog metal soundtrack locks in perfectly with the game's kinetic energy. Even on easier difficulties, the battles can still get pretty relentless at times, but you have so many tools at your disposal to lay waste to your foes. So if you're looking for a 2D character action game, I think Magenta Horizon is a really nice, underrated pick. And from here on out, we're looking at games that I've never played before until getting this bundle myself. Now, I did not have a scientific process behind this. I just chose the first 20 games that grabbed me the most based on their artwork and descriptions, much like you probably would. And again, just reminding you, even after finishing this video, there will still be 85 other games that you haven't seen yet that are also in this bundle. Nekomancer of Nowhere is a super interesting isometric puzzle game where you play as a wizard cat who is able to seamlessly transport himself between the realm of the living and the dead, so I assume he has much more than 9 lives. You'll use this transportation ability to get past objects, and along the way, you'll be sealing the souls of corrupted fallen ones. You do all of this by drawing runic symbols on the screen with your mouse, and also sorry about my drawings here. Another cool thing about the game is that when you seal the souls of the monsters, the animals who were once corrupted come back to life and can talk to you, which I thought was really neat. The Halloween-adjacent look sits right at home next to games like Pumpkin Jack or A Hat in Time, and it just seems like one of those games that you'd think would be much more popular. Also, just wanted to say, I really wish this game had been on the Wii or the Wii U. I think it would have been a perfect fit there with motion or touchpad controls. But the mouse works great too. Now, I had to try Skatebird because who doesn't want to play a Tony Hawk type game where you play as an actual bird, not just someone who has a bird last name? I'll admit, I kind of thought that this was going to be just like a silly meme game, and I mean, yeah, it is really funny and silly, but it's also just a solid, fun game with objectives and a trick system and unlockables and everything. The tiny environments really threw me back to Disney's Extreme Skate Adventure, and I know that's kind of an oddball pick, but don't knock it until you try Skatebird. waiting in Andy's room. I just loved every minute that I spent here. One of my favorite little details is the bird's little head bob that he does when he grinds on the rails, and I also really love the amount of customization that you get here. You can also squawk at any time in order to kick off your combo multiplier, which I'd have never thought of, but now I can't picture not having that in this game. It does have a little bit of jank here and there with some awkward landings and stuff like that, but this is definitely one of those games that's better because of the jank. Arranger is likely the first game that you're going to see if you look up this bundle, and for good reason. The visuals are extremely impressive, which is no surprise really, given that the artist behind this one also worked on Braid. I will say though, this game was kind of confusing for a second and the puzzles got harder and harder as I went, but once you learn how to maneuver around, it's a pretty cool experience. It's interesting how you can defeat enemies by pushing weapons into them strategically and creatively, and oftentimes you'll need to go off the map and appear on the opposite side of it, Pac-Man style, in order to reach the path that you're actually trying to get to. The characters and dialogue were also a real highlight for me too. I love the guy who explicitly calls out how he's blocking the critical path and then he calls you like a fried chicken or something. And though it can get pretty silly, there are definitely hints of a greater narrative here, as the main character is clearly unlike anyone else. She's able to shift the ground beneath her regardless of whether she wants to or not, and she seems to have some sort of grand destiny in store for her. So far, I've just gotten a taste of the game, but I think it's well worth experiencing. Antecrypt, I thought I had totally figured out just based on the screenshots alone, but it actually surprised me quite a bit. First things first, the 8-bit chiptunes here are fantastic. I also really like the old school filters on display and the general idea behind the game. You are apparently trying to restore humanity's last hard drive, defeating a variety of computer viruses along the way. And while it may seem like a traditional old school twin stick shooter, it's actually a single stick shooter. You only control your movement, and when you shoot or throw bombs, your character aims independently. It is insane to me how this one seemingly small change turns the game from a typical arcade run and gun romp to a surprisingly cerebral experience that's more about positioning and knowing when to let off the trigger rather than just blasting away like a madman. You also can't just shoot around like crazy because your gun has limited ammo and needs to recharge. And let me tell you, it can be a bit stressful if you accidentally let it die, because then the gun charges substantially slower. If you saw my Ardu Boy video last week, specifically when I talked about Zombie Slayer, you'll know that I'm a big fan of this type of resource management mechanic. Check that video out after this one if you'd like to see some other creative games. Speaking of creative, Atomic Owl is the next one I want to talk about. Now, I wasn't originally going to play this game actually, but a fan of the channel commented on my recent post about this bundle and revealed that he's a member of the team that developed this game, and so I said I would give it a shot. And oh my gosh, am I so glad that I did. And I promise I'm not just saying that because I know that he'll be watching. Atomic Owl is one of my favorite games that I've played on this list so far. When I first saw it, I just assumed that it would be a Metroidvania, kind of like how I did for Magenta Horizon. But this one is also more of an action-oriented game than anything else, and it delivers some of the smoothest movement, platforming, and combat I've seen while still balancing an old school and modern action feel. The variety of the weapons was a big part of what made this game so fun for me as well. And no surprises here considering I'm a Castlevania boy at heart, but so far I really enjoy the whip of course, and the hammer that you can throw sort of like the axe in Castlevania. The drum and bass and atmospheric electronic music are so fitting for the cyberpunk vibe that this game has. And I also adore the fact that the developers give you an option to either play this game as a traditional linear 2D platformer or stick with their original vision of playing it as a roguelike. This is definitely one that I'm going to continue to play, and I'm so glad that you brought this to my attention, Steven, because it is a blast. Alright, now let's switch up the vibes entirely. Winter Witch is an extremely cute black and white game with an art style reminiscent of Paper Mario. Despite its cold setting, the game itself is like a warm hug. You play as a witch who is trying to explore the depths of the woods, but in order to do that, you'll have to gather resources along the way and come back to your cabin to craft the items that you need, such as kindling to burn down the bramble, or a bridge kit so that you can rebuild broken bridges and cross the cold streams. The game has a day and night cycle, so you also want to try to make the most of your time and get further and further each day before it gets dark. Thankfully though, your sleepy cat Merlin is there to greet you when you turn in for the night. Oh, and don't forget to pet him. I feel like that's going to be really important. Dungeon Bodega Simulator is another chill one that I knew I would need to play as soon as I saw that title, and thankfully this was another one that was a pleasant surprise. It's much more than meets the eye. Dungeon Bodega sees you playing as a recently laid-off adventurer who is now running a small shop for those who are still doing the heroic stuff. And my favorite thing about this game is how it oddly reminded me of Vermintide 2 in the sense that the game doesn't really have much in the way of menus. Instead of fumbling through inventory screens, you physically walk to where your crops are to water or harvest them. You hand select and place the items you choose to sell for the day on your shelf. You even have a room with symbols carved into the bricks, and this room serves as your skill tree area. It's just remarkable to me how little touches like these make any action you take in the game feel so much more intentional and immersive than simple menu clicking would. I also like that it's entirely up to you how you run and stock your store. Just as a simple example, the very first day I sold a good bit of bananas and apples, so I made sure to buy a little more than I sold for the next day, and I ended up having just enough. The ambient music in this game is so chill, the GoldenEye 64 ass blocky NPCs are really nostalgic, and it looks like there is a lot to explore and unlock in this game. Also, like Winter Witch, this game knows what's up. You can pet your little bodega cat here as well. Hyper Gunsport is the spiritual successor to Windjammers on Neo Geo that I never knew I needed. I accidentally forgot to press the record button when I first played this game, but I enjoyed it so much that I restarted from the beginning and did it all over again because it's just that good. The sprite work and visual details are immaculate. The characters are exaggerated hyper caricatures packed with personality. And the gameplay is quite addictive too. You can play this game with up to 4 players 2v2 style, which I feel like has to be an absolute blast. However, single player is fun too. Now, the way this game works is it's basically volleyball but with guns. The character in the back is a stationary sniper type character, while the other one in the front is doing all the running and spiking and stuff like that. Like I said, I played this game twice, and on my second playthrough I played as the up front character and ended up enjoying that best, just allowing the CPU to handle the sniping for me. What you try to do is aim it in the goals behind the other characters that you're playing against, and there are all sorts of trick shots you can invoke if you manage to have both characters hit the ball at the same time. There are ultimates you can unleash when the time is right to try to score. This game is just super fun, intense, and while it's easy to pick up and play, it seems like there's a high skill ceiling. I'm considering getting this one on Switch as well, where I feel like it would be right at home. Now this time let's do another dungeon simulator, except this one has a bit more goblin energy. Crypt Crawler is a dungeon crawling tower defense game, and like Hyper Gunsport, offers up to 4 players, which I'd imagine is a blast. But even doing goblin stuff by myself, I had a good time. There are 16 handcrafted levels where you'll defend yourself and your loot against the undead who inhabit these tombs, but there is also an endless procedurally generated mode as well. For some reason when I was playing this game, I kept thinking that it would look cool with some retro filters, so I gave in to that urge and put shader glass on top of it, and man, do I have good instincts. I don't know why, but this game just looks right to me with that on it. It may be the fact that you're playing as a little goblin tinkerer giving me those goblin commander vibes or something that makes me really want to play this all CRT-like. I don't know, but nevertheless, I had a really fun time with this one, and the multitasking can get intense. It isn't the most polished thing I've ever seen, but I do enjoy the art style and the lighting, and I think it's well worth your time. However, not all zombie killing games can be winners. Similar to Antecrypt, I assumed just looking at Dead End that it would be a twin-stick shooter, but this game also removes a degree of control from you as its main gimmick to help set it apart. Unfortunately, where Antecrypt saw an extra layer of strategy in my eyes because you can't control your aiming, Dead End takes away your ability to control your movement, and I think the game suffers greatly as a result. Harold the Gardener runs endlessly in fear and will not not stop unless you shoot. While you shoot, you can pivot him around in different directions, but as soon as you let go of the fire button, he'll run in the direction that he was last facing. Now, I'm sure someone out there will enjoy this, but for me personally, this was the first one I tried of the bunch that I just honestly didn't gel with. I do like that charming Plants vs. Zombies-esque art style though. Speaking of charming art styles, Cool Kid Cody was thankfully a real winner for me. This is a visual novel / point and click game that calls itself an interactive cartoon, which I think is fitting. The game is super weird and unique in the best of ways. Basically, the premise is that in this world, there are only two types of kids: losers and cool kids. The losers live in pretty terrible conditions and understandably wish that they could become the cool kids. The cool kids have much better lives and also have the opportunity to become a god, of which there seem to be many. These gods, who usually seem to take the form of some inanimate object with wings, rule over their assigned domain and reside in the Chill Haven, up above Hella City where all the humans live. You know, Haven and Hella. You play as Cool Kid Cody, a kid obsessed with becoming a god, and along the way you learn a lot about friendship, perception, and what it really means to be cool. The Hardship Bundle contains Season 1 of Cool Kid Cody, so if you enjoy this one, Seasons 2 and 3 are available as separate purchases. Now, it took me about an hour to complete the first 2 episodes, and Season 1 contains 10 episodes in total, just to kind of give you an idea of how long this game may be. It's funny, it's weird, and it was one I had a hard time peeling myself away from in order to play these other games. I'm definitely coming back to this one. They Bleed Pixels is an incredible and incredibly violent platformer action game. You play as this girl who gets possessed by a demonic book, and man, she just freaking embraces it. You go, Wednesday Addams. She enters this other realm, grows these demon claws, and just goes ham on all these unsuspecting shadow creatures. You almost feel bad for them. This game is bloody and ruthless and ridiculously fun. The simple but effective pixel art pairs perfectly with that twisted sort of Alice Madness Returns vibe that this game has. The platforming is tight, the hazards are many, and the amount of combos and vicious stab energy that it has that I really enjoy, oddly enough, makes me wonder whether I should worry a little bit about myself. I'm definitely ready to venture further into the Shadow Realm here. Another game that really stood out to me due to its art style, and I was excited to try because of my recent undertaking of puzzle games, was Gunhouse. Now, this is a game that blends tower defense with match 3 puzzle games, which sounds like such a sick concept on paper. However, unfortunately, the blend just did not work for me. You only have 19 seconds to match as many blocks as you can, and at least for me, it just wasn't enough, especially because I was still trying to learn the game. So unfortunately, this one ended up just being a really frustrating experience where I desperately tried to prep my station, be lucky if I got a couple matches, and then be punished during the tower defense segments because I didn't do well enough. I really tried with this one, but it just didn't work for me. Thankfully, Astropods lifted my spirits back up. This is an insanely colorful game that feels like a modern Game Boy Advance title, and I'm saying that in the most complimentary manner that I can. In this game, you'll be doing rapid-fire platforming and fighting with the ability to seamlessly switch between 2 different characters at any given moment. Hemi wields a giant hammer, Amy Rose style, and obviously has much slower swings but a lot more power. Whereas Acro is this, acrobatic, fast little dude who can fly across the stage and gets in lots of little hits quickly. Now, this is the first game I've played since Declines drops where I felt like it really has that Super Smash Bros. Subspace Emissary type of gameplay. Directional attacks, movement, and fun platforming with deceptively simple inputs that just work. And that, coupled with its Kirby adjacent visuals, makes this a game that I feel like Masahiro Sakurai would be a fan of. And I know I've got a lot of action platformers in this list already, but I don't regret that at all because this is yet another in this bundle that's such a strong and inventive example of the genre. Now, I don't think any PC game collection is complete until it has some sort of Doom adjacent experience, and thankfully this bundle has one that I had never heard of before called Castle of the West. And I'm admittedly a sucker for boomer shooters, but man, I love what I played of this one so far. It has all the hallmarks of a classic Doom-like: labyrinthian level layouts, secrets and pickups, no reloading, fast movement, killer MIDI music, the works. In this game, you'll be using a crossbow to fell lizard lizard men and skeleton men and all sorts of stuff, all while trying to find the multicolored keys that you need to progress further. It doesn't reinvent the wheel here, but it doesn't have to because it's just so fun. Now I will say I noticed that the game's decorative border occasionally flickered when I played, and I'm sure some may not enjoy how the visuals get kind of bit crushed and chunky when you're looking far out into the distance, but none of this personally bothered me too much. It's a solid boomer shooter to add to your collection. But Centauri Dark was the first-person shooter that I was the most excited about, as it seemed to be more influenced by Doom Eternal as opposed to Doom 93. Unfortunately though, I think I enjoy Castle of the West a lot more. Now, let me just say, the movement in this game is fantastic. The sense of speed is great, the ability to triple jump and fly across the map, auto-locking onto enemies and blasting them to smithereens, it's super fun. And the simple visuals are an acquired taste, I'm sure, but I personally really enjoyed them. The problem for me was that I felt like there wasn't too much more to this game to see after I experienced all of the above. I wish the game had more modifiers going on or enemy types. It just needed a bit more something to make it special in my opinion, especially because over the last 5 years or so there have been really great modern boomer shooters that take on that sort of Doom Eternal influence. I just felt like I wanted something else and it just didn't quite arrive, unfortunately. But that's just my opinion. Orebody Binder's Tale is actually a 2022 Nintendo Entertainment System game. Taking obvious inspirations from Mega Man, it's really quite fun and I think does a great job of feeling authentic to the spirit of original Nintendo games, with both the good and the bad that comes from that. I like how the game really pushes NES graphics. I like the story of this one where you're this robot who is adopted by humans only to see them slaughtered by other robots, so he ventures out on this quest through this burning forest, and in general I like the power-ups and the moment-to-moment run-and-gun gameplay. In typical NES fashion though, there are some kind of cheap enemies like these little archer guys who I think shoot just a little too fast to reasonably take out consistently, but I had a good time against the bosses I faced, and so far it seems like a game that NES enthusiasts would really enjoy. You can tell it was made by people who enjoy NES classics. Just know that old school difficulty comes with that as well. Now the last 3 games on my list are arguably the most abrasive of the bunch, but I really enjoyed my time with them. Lucah, Born of a Dream gives us probably the most unique look we've seen since Cool Kid Cody. Everything is presented in this hand-drawn, scratchy style with bright colors that pop against that black background. It reminds me of Omori in the sense that you play as this character who seems to be in some sort of internal hell that he's been to many times before, and I imagine that across the course of the game, you'll discover the secrets of his inner psyche. Instead of a turn-based RPG though, this is a very action-oriented game that leans more into the Souls-like territory. Even early on, it can be quite difficult, and while I love that scratchy art style, that style also makes it kind of hard to tell when enemies are going to attack at times. However, this game is automatically a stone cold classic since wind is green in it. I mean, check out the arrow spirit there. And more importantly, I can tell that it has something to say. Another game that definitely has something to say, and easily winning the award of the weirdest game here of the bunch, is Drywall Eating Simulator. Like Dungeon Bodega Simulator, I was sold just based on the title alone. This is a game where I think you're like an alien trying to understand humans. I'm not really sure yet. And you're moving around through this surreal world where you talk to others who tell you about capitalism, basically. The people in this world love artificial intelligence. They love being exploited by systems designed to keep the poor poor and the rich wealthy, and their incessant diatribes really anger your character. So much so that the only way they can calm themselves down is by eating drywall. Yeah, I've been there too, buddy. No, honestly, I have no idea really what's going on, yet at the same time I feel like I totally get it, and I'm glad this game exists. In a really weird way, I feel like this is something you'd have seen on a Dreamcast successor had the Dreamcast succeeded. Tell me this doesn't fit right in with Seaman, Lack of Love, or D2. I mean, you can tell me it doesn't, but I won't hear it. Too busy eating drywall. And last, but certainly not least, Sirena Expedition is such a cool game. If Drywall is Dreamcast, Sirena is PlayStation 1. And man, does it honor that aesthetic so well. This is a thalassophobia horror experience where you play as this female diver exploring this underwater facility that has long since been abandoned. As she goes deeper and deeper into the depths, she sees horrific and surreal things, but feels strangely compelled to explore further despite the people on the communications team urging her not to through the radio. Also, not spoiling anything here, but this game gets weird and trippy and kind of eldritchy, and I think it's going to be just what the doctor ordered for a lot of people. Sirena is also one of the best examples, in my opinion, of a modern take on PlayStation 1 graphics. The warbly textures are here, the fuzziness and chunky polygons are here, and that atmosphere is fantastic. I also really appreciate how it doesn't control the way that you would initially assume. Now, you'd think that this has tank controls like Resident Evil or Silent Hill, but it's actually a 2.5D game where you go on linear paths through 3D environments. Movement-wise, it's more like Klonoa or Pac-Man World than anything else, and it really works despite being tonally the opposite of games like that. And it's supposedly a pretty self-contained little experience, not too long, so I'm going to beat this one for sure. Alright, so there you have it. 22 games from a bundle that only costs $10 and supports a good cause. Hopefully you see there's something for just about everyone here. The backlogs never get easier to conquer, and 107 games are certainly not going to help, but I think $10 gives you a really good problem to have here. Let me know what you like the looks of in the comments down below, and if you picked up the bundle, let me know what you plan on playing first or have been playing. Especially if it's a game that wasn't featured in this video, I would love to learn more about it, or if you're a developer of one of these games, please let everyone know what you want them to know about your game. If you're still here, thanks so much for watching, and as always, stay humble.